Democrats are demanding answers from the Trump administration, saying top officials lied to them about ousting Nicolas Maduro and questioning whether the president violated the Constitution by attacking Venezuela without congressional approval. Here with me now is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Democrat Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Thank you so much for being here.
Certainly.
What's your reaction to this operation?
Well, I mean, clearly this is wildly illegal. This is a president who has been operating illegally since he was sworn into office, stealing from the American people, seizing spending power.
What's illegal?
Now dragging America into a war overseas. The president cannot run a military operation of this size, cannot invade a foreign country without coming to Congress first, without allowing.
So, guys, thank you so much for John Soto-Cast. I'm going to let him see where he goes, see if she pushes back at all, and then I'm going to give you like a very quick rundown of how much dog shit this is. Let's hear it out first.
Allowing the American public to weigh in. America doesn't want this war. Nobody asked for this because it has nothing to do with American national security. And I think that's the most important conversation to have. Listen, Venezuela is not a security threat to the United States. They're not threatening to invade us. There is no terrorist group like Al-Qaeda operating there that has plans to attack the United States. To the extent that you care about the drug trade, yes, they produce drugs, but those drugs go to Europe. Fentanyl is the drug that's killing Americans. That's not coming from Venezuela. Venezuela produces cocaine. 90% of it is not coming to the United States. This seems to be mostly about oil and natural resources. Donald Trump's entire foreign policy is corrupt. Russia, the Middle East, and now Venezuela is all about making money for his friends. And Wall Street, the oil industry, they can make a lot of money off of Venezuela if they run it. You saw within hours of the invasion, the announcement of a group of Wall Street investors, energy industry investors, planning a trip to Venezuela to make money off of this invasion, off of this ouster. So unfortunately, once again, you're seeing that this president's foreign policy, the invasion of Venezuela, the ouster of Maduro, is about making his crowd filthy rich. It has nothing to do with American national security.
Can I just go back to the legality and the point that you made about needing to come to Congress first? You know that for decades, Congress has let Democratic and Republican presidents sort of go for it on military actions. I mean, look at President Obama in Libya. And so it's not new that Congress has become, frankly, impotent on issues and matters of war.
That's absolutely true. And Congress needs to own its own role in allowing a presidency to become this lawless. The fact of the matter is that the president's justification makes no sense here. He says that this was just a law enforcement operation. Well, there are people with warrants all over the world. That doesn't give the president of the United States the power to launch $1 billion invasion of those countries to bring a fugitive to justice. Yes, Congress should have stepped in and either authorized or prohibited President Obama's actions in Libya. Yeah.
All right, President. What was he saying that at the time? President Obama's actions in Libya, Reagan in Grenada, Bush in Panama, Clinton in Mogadishu, Biden in Kabul. So to go out and say that's a bullshit argument. Number one, he has a much better argument saying that why the question of why is actually better than trying to come out and be on a high horse and say that no, he shouldn't. Obama in Pakistan. I mean, you're talking about there are every single military action probably since as far back as I can think of. I mean, going back to the Reagan administration, when Bush took out Noriega, Clinton again in Afghanistan and Sudan. That was in the late 90s. I mean, is it partly about oil? I guarantee you it is. Because Venezuela went from producing 3 million barrels to 500,000 over the same period of time. And what is that? The refineries in Texas were dependent upon Venezuelan oil. So you can go ahead and say, first of all, they did have warrants for their arrest, number one. They were, as far as all accounts, they were illegitimate leaders. They stole the presidency. As far as all accounts would tell you, that actually would happen. Trump also might be a little bit peeved because apparently the same people that helped steal Maduro's election also stole the election in 2020 from Trump. That is kind of like a little fringe theory, but that also might be something that's at play here. Maduro's nephews were arrested back in 2015 for cocaine trafficking, brought into the United States to serve 20-something year sentences, and then Biden pardoned them and sent them back in 2022, I think. He pardoned them, sent them back to Maduro. Those are his nephews. They were trafficking something like 800 keys. So you can't say he's not a narco dictator. He absolutely is. Does that justify taking him out? Again, as on my personal view, I would say no. I don't want to see it done. But I can't see people getting up on their high horses after 3 and 4 decades of this stuff just happening all the time and saying that this is somehow different, that this is somehow out of the norm, that this is somehow unjustified in comparison to all of the other times that we've done this. Again, I still can be against it, but I'm not going to go tout and say this is not the norm. This is basically standard of care for the United States. And couple that with, if you look at the majority of people in Venezuela, if you look at especially the people here are in the streets absolutely ecstatic. You know, I mean, Twitter just opened up, X just opened up out in Venezuela, so now you're starting to get reports from there now. They're very happy. We don't know what the next phase is going to be, something that has to be looked at. But you know, you can't get on your high horse now and say this is not legal. None of the last 20th century was legal when it comes to military operations.
Yes, the United States Congress has sat on the sidelines to allow presidents to become more and more powerful in foreign policy, but that doesn't mean that it suddenly gives a imprimatur of legality to this massive invasion of a foreign country that the American public didn't ask for.
You know, there's no.
By the way, like, he talking about massive invasion. I don't think there's anybody that's still there. Like, they went in, they got the guy, they left. This is not an occupation.
Question that Maduro was a destabilizing force, not just in Venezuela, in the region. And there are people celebrating in the streets all over South America and Venezuelan expats abroad. So is it fair to say that there is some benefit in Maduro not being in power?
But what changes? I mean, you just heard Senator Cotton effectively not be able to explain who's running the country. Now, Delcy Rodriguez is a very powerful figure in her own right, handpicked by Maduro. Russia and China still provide enormous support to that country. What changes? Why would Venezuela stop its export of drugs, its harassment of U.S. interests in the region? There's really no explanation for how American interests are changed.
Well, what changes is this. What changes, even if the people in power still stay in power, now they realize the game has changed. You can't just say what changes. If they just saw a couple of helicopters, like all the air defenses were taken out, a few helicopters swoop in, take you out while you're sitting in your couch watching Netflix, and you're the leader, you're the president, and now you're going to be sitting in a jail cell probably for the rest of your life. That changes something. That definitely changes the mindset. It changes to the point where you say, listen, you need to start playing ball, because we can absolutely reach out and touch you 100%. I mean, they waltzed in there, and I mean, the operation was done in the blink of an eye. All of their because those were all Russian weapons, is my understanding. All that stuff was taken out immediately. I think a helicopter got like a scratch on it. That's about it. That's all that happened. So if you want to say nothing changes, then you're just playing politics at that point, because you have to know that the mindset of the leaders in Venezuela have definitely changed. Definitely changed. They basically, they know this guy's not effing around anymore. He's serious. When he says something, there's a really high potentiality that he will do it. He will follow through. He's not the red line in the sand guy. You go over it and nothing's going to happen. Something will happen eventually.
At all with a Rodriguez administration that right now seems to be intent on carrying through and carrying forward the policies of Nicolas Maduro.
In 2019, you wrote an op-ed and you called for Maduro to be gone. You said, let's get one thing straight. There should no longer be any debate about Maduro's lack of democratic legitimacy. The Trump administration is right to put restoring Venezuelan democracy at the center of our approach to this crisis. A return to a stable democracy is in the interest of the Venezuelan people and the United States and the hemisphere. We don't know what's going to happen with regard to the civilian leadership there. Tom Cotton was just here saying that he hopes that there are democratic elections. Isn't that what you want?
Well, the rest of that article was a criticism of President Trump's early moves to saber rattle around regime change. Listen, there are evil, brutal dictators all over the world. That does not give the American president the right to invade those countries, in large part because we have seen how this script plays out.
Well, one part, while I do agree, I would say that as far as the benefit to the American people, this is much different than, dictators in Africa or in Asia or whatever the case, whatever other country you could be speaking of, where, I mean, she did make the point that there aren't terrorist cells. As far as I know, there are terrorist cells over there. There are Muslim extremists that have terrorist cells that have been set up in Venezuela. China is set up there. Russia is set up there. You're talking about it has become a jumping off point for essentially all of our foes around the world to have some sort of a land base there in proximity to the United States. So while I still agree that maybe that we should not have done it, I still can be convinced that there are massive amount of benefits in doing it. And oil is one of them. Let's be quite honest. Let's be real. Everyone stop being on their high horse. If this ends up turning out well for the Venezuelan people, regime change is going to be tough. They're going to have to go through all their ups and downs. It seems like for the most part, the people there are happy with what's going on, with the direction the country's going in. So if the people there end up being happy, let's say a bunch of investors do go in there and they're like, let's get this thing rocking and rolling here. They start exporting oil, and now oil all of a sudden, a gallon of gas drops down to $1.50. And that helps the majority of the middle class in this country. You have the Venezuelan people that are happy. You have businesses that are making money. You have the American people that now have cheaper gas and cheaper things all around, because once you lower the price of gasoline and oil, everything else drops, because that's the basis of essentially our economy. It runs on petrol, runs on fuel. Things get to stores on fuel. Things are made with fuel. So if all of that comes about, then it's kind of hard to argue that he didn't have a basis, or he's just doing it just because. He's not doing it just because. There are a massive amount of reasons that he's doing it. I can still disagree with the premise. I can still disagree with the style or what he did. But you can't just go out there and say that it's not without reason, and the reasoning isn't something that's going to benefit the United States as a whole.
I watched an interview with Senator Cotton. You asked him what the difference was between Iraq and Venezuela. He didn't say the difference was we aren't going to invade Venezuela like we invaded Iraq. He said that if we invade Venezuela, which may be part of the president's plan, it's going to go really well. Over and over again, we have seen these warmongering neocons, many of which have influence in this White House, cheerlead us into war under the guise of removing a very bad man. That ends up getting a lot of Americans killed. And if this is really just about the oil, if this is really just about the natural resources, if this is just about getting a bunch of Donald Trump's friends on Wall Street even richer, I don't think there's a single American family who would support having their son or daughter put into harm's way to defend the interests of Wall Street.
And that might be true if it was just that simple of an issue, but it's obviously not. And with what I said before, it's obviously not. For what I said before, the Venezuelan country is being used by Islamists, is being used by Russia, is being used by China, is hurting middle America with the rising oil prices. All that stuff is also true. It's not just true. It's not one or the other. It can be both. It can be, are people going to get rich? There's a very good chance. Are the Venezuelan people going to be better off? It's also a very good chance. Is middle America also going to probably benefit if the cost of oil drastically gets reduced by 20-30%? Also, it can be all of these things at once. And just to focus in on just one and say, if this is the reason why, if it's just about Donald Trump's friends getting rich, then I don't want my son going over there. Yeah, that's true. But you're leaving out all the other parts.
This is once again American oil interests, American financial interests coming before the actual national security interests of the United States.
I do want to ask about a briefing that the Secretary of State and Defense held with senators. You were there.
Yep.
Last month about Venezuela. Can you talk about what they said and whether or not that actually bore out?
Well, I can certainly tell you the message that they sent was that this wasn't about regime change. I mean, they came to Congress and they literally lied to our face. They said, this is just a counter-narcotics operation. This is about trying to interrupt the drug flow to the United States. Right around that same time, the White House Chief of Staff said publicly, if we ever had boots on the ground in Venezuela, of course we would have to come to Congress. Listen, there's no way to trust this administration. They aren't being straight with the American people. There isn't even a briefing scheduled for Congress next week to explain A, what happened, and B, what the plan is moving forward. But yes, I mean, I think everybody in that briefing heard the administration say this is just a targeted counter-narcotics operation. This has nothing to do with regime change. They knew they weren't telling the truth in that room.
All right. So that's what he's saying. Yeah. Again, as somebody who is, I am not for this. I am not for regime change. I am not. I think, there are tyrants throughout the entire world, and we should not be getting involved in other countries' messes and stuff like that. It's just going to drag us down. It's going to drag us into another quagmire, and I don't want to see that. I think most people don't want to see that. However, it was the same thing when it came to Iran. I wasn't down. I'm still not down for what they did. However, it was calculated. It was in and out. It was a one-shot deal. If this ends up being the same thing, I think where we are as a society, if we can exchange 20-year-long regime-changing wars for a quick little strike in and out, I think we'd rather go for that. Like if they still got to get their fixes in, I'd rather it be this way than invading a country and being there for 20 years. So seems like we're moving in the right direction. So not, we're better than we were before. I'll put it to you that way. We're not getting bogged down into military conflicts, boots on the ground kind of situations. So if this is where we got to be in the meantime, in the interim, before we can just not be involved anywhere, then, like I said, we're moving in the right direction. It's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. We've all seen worse. So that's my take. My take is just give the administration some leeway, give them some room. Let's hope this works out right now. Let's hope that just the threat of potential further action is enough to stem the tide. Let these people have an election. Try to make it as legit as possible. Get some people in there. Start working on the oil. That's going to help Venezuelans. That's going to help the world. That's going to help everybody, or at least America, right? And that's kind of all we can hope for. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for all the new subs. 6283talk on the X if you want to follow me on X. If you want to share this, I really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next video, guys. I'm John Soto. Take care.